In Albuquerque, there's been a lot of talk recently about that tent city in downtown near the rail yards. It's a very visible sign of homelessness here in the city, and neighbors have raised concerns about crime and dangerous conditions for both the people living in the camp and others nearby. But individuals in the camp say they don't have anywhere else to go. The city of Albuquerque issued eviction notices this week, and Margaret, we've had some movement now. We have some community coalition groups have stepped forward to help these folks get to Borellis in some kind of a manageable place. We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about this in hindsight. I want to talk about media coverage about this first, in a sense of how the media is attacked at this problem. Meaning from if you're living in the Northeast Heights, you know nothing about downtown, you know nothing about the homeless problem, what would you come away with after the media report?
As a member of the media who reported on this, I might have a little bit of a different slant. But my approach, after seeing some of the immediate kind of knee-jerk coverage, was to talk to some of the people who were there. And it's just a really important reminder when you sit down with these folks that this is not a uniform set of people with a uniform set of problems. Right. And there are a range of issues that play into their needs and possible solutions. And chief of which they talked about was the need for behavioral health services and addiction treatment services, which are just woefully inadequate throughout both the city and the state at this point.
That's right.
And it's also important to acknowledge that some people are homeless. In some ways, it's a choice, and they think of it as it's a lifestyle that offers a lot of freedom.
It's safer.
That's a very American principle. It's not something that I could find myself arguing with, and so much of it, to me, as a member of the media, it's really important to put a face on these people and humanize their experience, and then hope that policy then responds in a humane way.
That's right. I appreciate what Margaret's saying that, Stephen, because when you think about the early take on who made up the population of this tent city, a lot of the language coming out of the city talked about drugs, crime, criminals. There's a lot of demonization of these people early on. I think what Margaret's getting at, that a lot of press had to come in and sort of beat back and humanize a little bit. Is that part of the problem here, that we can't seem to find our compassion?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think Margaret said it really well, but yeah, I mean, we're a high poverty state, right? We have a lot of people that are minimum wage workers. They're living in these motels, paying a weekly rate.
Right.
They're one paycheck from being homeless. And we may have maybe 1,500 people in shelters, maybe another 500 unsheltered, but that's a constantly changing population, as was said. So, you know, we have a problem, just like every other major city like us has a problem. I think the homeless coalitions have been working at it. The city has been working at it. We're not going to cure homelessness, but you know, as you said at the top when you introduced this, hats off to the Borellis Community Coalition and Javier Benavides, because instead of not in my backyard, they're saying we're gonna help you people. We're not gonna kick you out. Hopefully there'll be toilet facilities, places to wash. You know, the support of the coalition, as Margaret said, is really, really important.
That's right. Interesting, the Borellis Neighborhood Association should be getting their props on this as well, Merritt, because again, just like Stephen said, not in my backyard is not the modus operandi here. This is a different approach.
Exactly, and but to me, that's also, to me, a very New Mexican thing. Okay, we'll take care of our own.
Right.
Growing up in a small town, we had a developmentally disabled man who the whole town adopted. His trailer burned down. Churches got together, built him another one. That doesn't mean that puts the state and the city and government off the hook, but I think it's important for communities to remember their humanity and their empathy and reach out to these folks as well, and not just expect the state to take care of them or move them on.
That's right. You know, Tom, Stephen mentioned Javier Benavides, who's been at this table quite a few times, and now with his capacities at Southwest Organizing Project. Interesting, the quotes from Javier. They want to get to the root causes of homelessness eventually, and not just quick fixes that move people along. As Stephen mentioned, because it annoys me, I just have to bring this up. It was so annoying to me that why do you give someone a voucher for a hotel room for a week and expect that to be some kind of solution for a person that's really been struggling?
Very patronizing.
That's how it came across.
And it didn't play well. I mean, to me, you know, you have all these different non-government organizations, faith-based organizations, including Albuquerque Heading Home, who are trying to tackle and get their arms around this issue of homelessness. You know, as Margaret had mentioned, there are some folks who probably just would rather prefer that way of life, and in which case, you know, fine, let's let them, you know, do that. But it has amazed me how this issue has just festered for as long as it has. I mean, it's been a smoldering issue for about the last week and a half to 2 weeks, and it finally reaches a head. And the media coverage of it, to answer your original question, is very fascinating because, you know, being someone who lives in the Northeast Heights and travels the city quite extensively, you know, I think that it's really portrayed downtown as and reinforced a lot of the negative stigmas of, you know, being high crime, a lot of homeless activity, things of that nature. So it isn't winning any friends for the Downtown Action Team. However, I think it's raising an issue and an opportunity for all of these organizations to say, how are we going to get our arms around this and really address it? Because right now it's just it's organized chaos.
That's right. We have to give our props to Dennis Plummer from Heading Home. They've done great work at Heading Home, so that there's stuff going on. It's not as if, you know, City Hall's
We
looking
don't have
around
enough
going,
permanent housing.
Right, exactly.
That's the problem.
Exactly. You know, and Margaret, it seems to me that, you know, we have to bring up the Las Cruces situation that was reported on in the New York Times a few weeks ago, where folks had set up a camp on the edge of town in Las Cruces, but social services saw the opportunity, went to the folks, set up their own camp beside them, and really had some great success very early. I wonder if we have this possibility here in Borellis now.
Sure, I do think there's a little bit of a danger in sanctioning a tent city and thinking of it as a permanent solution.
Right.
To me, I think people who live there would like a more permanent solution. And by saying that, I would like to say that by saying that it's a choice for some people, I think that's those people are in the far minority.
Right.
But they are still human and deserving of respect and consideration. But going back to the Las Cruces situation, I think the fact that it was a centralized place where people felt safe and services were easily accessible, that's what's made it functional.
It also included security down there as well, Merritt. You know, it wasn't as if it was folks who were left to their own devices. The city really stepped into it.
And I think that's so key because that's ultimately, I think, one of the key promises a city government offers to its citizens is safety and security. And sometimes I think that's where in Albuquerque, the homeless and authorities have butted heads before because I think we're all afraid of fires in the Bosque. So making, when you talk about community policing and making it more of a partnership and acknowledging that these people don't go away. And we talk about the Northeast Heights. You know, you see people at Uptown and Wyoming and Montgomery. I mean, it's not just a downtown problem, but it's something we have to be mindful of. And long-term solutions and long-term funding are the answers. The question is, you know, can that happen in 2015?
That's right. All circles around back to you, Stephen Spitz. You mentioned money. And it takes money. It takes resources. We can have all the great ideas we want. You got to have resources. So maybe this is the kind of issue that can shake out resources.
Well, I mean, the coalition, the Homeless Coalition, has been working at that. The federal government has been under restrictions in terms of funding these permanent housing. That's right. You know, rents have been going up. Salaries have not been going up. There's a terrible unemployment problem lingering from the recession here. I mean, we're facing kind of a triple whammy. I guess one of the things that I was pleased by was the reaction of the city to what Borellis did. It wasn't seen as oppositional. It was supportive. And so what you have to hope is that as was said by Margaret, that people who want to have shelter will be able to transition to temporary, transitional, and then permanent housing. But it is, as you say correctly. I mean, we lack money.
That's right.
To do that.
Do-re me. Up next, graduation rates are low at community colleges across the U.S., including here in New Mexico. Would making the first 2 years free help more students complete the requirements for an associate's degree or a certificate?